It wasn't until a week later that Malcolm found out the truth. A hazy, muggy Saturday morning, a little after 10, Malcolm was lying on his futon trying to get some sleep. He hadn't been able to fall asleep easily since the earthquake, and when he closed his eyes he could still feel the building moving. Carrie had convinced him it was just a phantom sensation, a sort of post-traumatic response, but the dozens of real aftershocks he had experienced in the past 2 days had only made things more difficult. He wondered if he had ever forgot what it felt like to have the ground to go crazy beneath his feet. He was beginning to drift off when there was a knock on the door to his apartment. He came fully awake with a start, and then quickly put a pair of sweatpants over his boxer. Sorry. Since the earthquake, he'd learned to keep a pair right next to his futon. The knocking continued even louder. His first thought was a Carrie, but since the earthquake they'd been using the fire escape more than the building elevator. He couldn't imagine who else would be visiting at this hour on a Saturday. Most of us expects left well beyond noon. When he opened the door to his apartment, he was surprised to find Teddy Sears standing in the hallway. Even more shocking, Sears looked like a mess. His blonde hair was frayed and hanging down round his cheeks in thick tangles. His white shirt was wrinkled, and 2 of the buttons had been fastened through the wrong holes. Without a word, he pushed them past Malcolm into the living room and headed straight for the couch. He sat heavily and pushed his head into his hands. Malcolm stared at him, terrified. "What is it? Did someone die?" "Not exactly," Sears said. He didn't raise his head. His voice came out between his hands. "Malcolm, there is no Mr. X." Malcolm sat there in dead silence. In a weird way, suddenly things were beginning to make sense. All of Leeson's huge position, the massive size he was throwing around, the way everyone in the world was asking that he was going with his client, the insanity that had occurred in the previous 4 months as Leeson had risen to the pinnacle of trading status, and now suddenly horribly it all made sense. Malcolm leaned back against the wall. "Christ, Mr. X, he doesn't exist. Never did. But Mr. X has over $10 billion stuck in the Nikkei. I put many of those through him myself." Sex shook his hand. His hair shivered back and forth. "Mr. X is Nick Leeson. Mr. X is us. That is our money that got lost in earthquake. That's our money. We all fucked." The enormity of what he was saying hit Malcolm like a pro-line breaker. He shook his head. It wasn't possible. So much money. The loss that would be $1 billion more, actually probably much more. $1 billion that Malcolm knew about. Who knew how much more elsewhere. It made Joe Jet $350 million glitch look like a party failure. $1 billion? Did Barnes ever have that much money? How it was possible? How had Leeson just made it? Did someone call him? Find out what happened. He's gone, Sir said, then near tears. You were one of the last people to speak him on Friday. Репетитор по скайпу, Smart Teacher 197.